Hey everybody, this is Perch. Sometimes you got to lean into the negativity. So we're going to lean into it here. Lean. If you say lean really stretched out like that, it sounds more impressive. These are YouTube tips, folks. Anyway, let's get into this mail, which is going to ask a negative question. We're going to have some fun with it. It says, hello, Perch. Hello. We're not using a hey, Perch. We're using a formal hello, Perch. Hello, Perch. I have two questions for you. The first has nothing to do with comics, but I thought you might have a funny answer. You thought wrong, my friend. No. Um, my first question is, how do you know when you've made enough money, when you're rich, when you no longer have to be back in the grindstone? How do you know when you finally, quote unquote, made it? When you're, that answer is going to be different for everyone. So see, I should be making it funny, but I'm not. Everybody's got a different bar. To me, I think one of the things that, as I've talked about this with friends and other things, there's a moment, at least that I had. I'm curious if any of you have had this, where, and it's not rich. I mean, rich is very, rich is funny because there's a lot of people who think they're rich. One of the things that I always found very funny is, working in tech back during a time when it was very, very good to work in tech. During that moment, you'd get people who would believe they were rich because they bought a Bentley. Don't get me wrong, you're doing well if you're driving around a Bentley, but then you meet someone. Invariably, like when you get some money, you start to travel in different circles where you meet people who have more money, and then you realize you're not, there's more rich to be had. It's an interesting thing. Anyway, this guy had bought a Bentley and he drove up to Vancouver and went over to see a friend's house who just bought a yacht. And I remember he came in. I saw him a few days later, and he's like, "I don't have a yacht. I'm not rich enough. I don't have a yacht." And he's looking up like costs of yachts. And this guy, it was a good yacht. It was not a little boat. It was a legit yacht. You have to say yacht. But I guarantee the guy with the yacht at some point is going to bump into the guy with the mega yacht, and then it's a rat race. What can I say? But for me, this is one of the things that I've said that's hit home with other people is, you go out and you buy gifts for people. And when I'm in college and kind of younger and at different times running the shop, I'm like, I got to go in, I need to pay. How much are we going to pay for this? All right, can I get this on sale? And you're going in and you have this game when you're dating. Now, Mrs. Perch is quite annoying in that she doesn't like name brands or that kind of stuff. Now, that's actually a good thing. It's not an annoying thing, but it does make it harder to buy gifts. And I've got friends who are like, the standing order from their wife or girlfriend is like, I want jewelry, ideally from, so from someplace nice. That reminds me, there's a guy I knew. He was dating a girl, and she's like, I only get the finest jewelry. I only want jewelry from Pandora. I'm like, ooh, got news for you. Things are going to happen in your life, and you're going to realize how that sounds. Anyway, but anyway, I was dating somebody, and I'm like, all right, I want to get an expensive bag, but I don't want to pay money for it. And so I'm in there, I'm like, all right, I go into Michael Kors and Coach and Kate Spade and kind of these stores. And I'm like, first of all, that's no place for a man. Like every aspect about it. And the people who are working in the stores know this. They're looking at you like, what the fuck are you doing? Sorry, I was saying, the people in the store are like, here's another dipshit who's going to try and buy the most name brand thing he can get at the cheapest possible price. Like he doesn't want to just shop in the clearance area there, but he's really looking for like a, something that looks legit brand, but he can pay $20 for it. That's, but that's if you're in there doing that shit, that is common. And then at one point, I remember I went in to go get a coat, and I was in a Neiman Marcus, and again as a gift. And I'm like looking around at all the coats, and it dawns on me, I never looked at the price tag. I was just looking for a good coat, and I'm just like looking around. And I get up to the register with this coat, and I'm like, fuck, I wonder how much this coat is. And that was the moment I what? I am financially comfortable. That's it. That's so for me, it's like at the point when you stop looking at the price tag is the moment you're there. But at the same time, I would say you should never stop looking at the price tag, because I'll tell you what I did. I got up to the register. I'm like, fuck, I need to wonder how much this thing is. And just as I'm about to put the coat on the little counter there, I like kind of fished a little tag out there, and the coat was $2,800. I'm like, oh fuck this, no. I'm like, the lady's like got her hand outstretched, take the gun. I'm like, nah, no, I don't love her that much. I'll take that thing right back. We're stopping at Belts on the way home. Anyway, I got a story about belts to tell y'all at some point. All right, that's enough of that bullshit. Let's get to the rest of the mail. So my second question is, I hope that first story was fun for anyone. Probably was fun for no one. Anyway, my second question is this. What is the worst comic that has come out in the last 10 years? There are lots of people who say this is the worst comic I've ever read, but in your opinion, what is the worst comic that's come out in the last 10 years? Or really of all time? Okay. Worst comic that's come out in the last 10 years for me, worst comic of all time. It's got to be that one with the dude who's married to dogs. He gets involved with the woman who's trying to marry crystals. That Joe and I reviewed that on this channel. You can look it up in the comic reviews folder. That thing was fucking terrible. That was a terrible, terrible comic. There's a lot of bad comics out there, of just like really bad comics. But if you're comic in the last 10 years and we're gonna forget about the mainstream, we're gonna forget about the indies where somebody's doing some crazy shit because they've always wanted to do a comic book and this is their dream, and it turns out they want to do a story about a dude who's married to a dog. And that's the dream. I cannot remember the name of that title. God, it was awful. Anyway, though, also the one with the haunted vagina in it, that was also that was quite bad too. But mainstream books, worst comic in the last 10 years. Probably America. Probably the Gabby Rivera American series. If you're talking about a legit kind of mainstream big two book that got some marketing and, they printed a trade paperback and all this, but it was just awful. Probably that comic. That comic was just bad. It got caught up in the culture wars because she was gay, and then she was like in college Sotomayor, and she was like from a planet of lesbians, and like it had a bunch of dumb culture war-y bullshit in there. But if you read that comic, if we go back and we revisit that comic, it's just a terrible comic. Like, it's written bad. The dialogue is bad. The plot is bad. The incredibly fake, terrible, Latino accent of America Chavez, or whoever wrote that clearly has never actually, it has no Latino heritage at all. I know, Gabby Rivera, but still, that thing read like somebody who has grown up their entire life in Toronto, Canada, and has never been further south than Quebec. That doesn't make sense. Anyway, that comic was probably the worst for me. While we're on the subject, one of the things that I do dislike about a lot of YouTube channels is there's this desire to kind of everything is constantly the worst thing they've ever seen. It's like, I thought it was bad, but oh my God, it was so much worse than what I thought it was going to be. It was so bad. It was the worst bad comic ever. It actually, and then you get into this long, like 3-minute spiel about somebody trying to, it's like I was pouring battery acid mixed with urine into my eyeballs while simultaneously eating red ants that were biting my tongue, which would be better than watching this movie, which was also like getting kicked in the balls by a person wearing a cinder block shoe and singing Billie Eilish. I thought, it's like, what the fuck are we even talking about at this point? This is probably my biggest complaint. I still enjoy listening to Critical Drinker, as I've said before. It's a bit, but the part of the bit I do dislike is like, it's like, this was the worst film ever. I thought it was bad, but oh my God, it was, I'm doing a horrible impression, but it was even worse. It was so woke and terrible bad. And it's like, okay. I mean, it can't always be the worst shit you've ever seen in your life. It's like, Velma was the worst shit. And then the first Rings of Power was the worst shit. And then some Marvel thing was the worst shit. And then the Rings of Power 2 was the worst shit. And it's always like, this is the epitome and the pinnacle of all that is horrible in Hollywood, the worst thing there's ever been. It can't always be the worst thing. By the way, I'm not just picking on him. A lot of people do this. and I don't, it's for you, the person listening to this right now, I guess, where it's like, this comic is so bad. It's so, like, oh, the worst issue of Green Lantern in the entire history of all Green Lanterns of Green Lantern. I don't know why I'm picking on Green Lantern. But it's not all bad. Look, the new X-Men, that NYX series by Colin Kelly and Lansing is terrible. Like, it's terrible. Exception X-Men is awful. Dazzler is awful. Is it the worst comic that's ever graced our shelves? Oh, no, not at all. Not even close. I mean, a lot of these things that you hear on YouTube that people say are like, they're so bad. It's just that they're dull. More often than not, they're dull. And I get that doesn't make a good video. Like, you can't get on here and be like, hey, everybody, this is Perch. Well, comic books are pretty just there this week. They have pages and there are ink on them, and then words with a staple, and there's a plot, sorta. And I mean, I read it, and I kind of, I forgot what it was really about. It didn't really matter. I could go back and look, but I mean, who cares? That's not as exciting as if I'm like, in this issue, Nightcrawler, fuck, it's the worst, awful. That's to me much worse. I don't know. So, worst comic to me, America Chavez, and I guess this is why we're going to turn it into a fun video. So, what do you think? What is the worst comic for you? What is the pinnacle of terrible comics in the last several years? And I think you could do it. Like, again, there's indie comics you could find for sure that are just thoroughly awful. But what about the mainstream? Okay, the big two. What is the worst book? I mean, I'll tell you, for me, Fear Itself, that event was pretty awful. That was a pretty awful event. Empire was pretty bad for me. But for me, that America book, and again, I know it got tied up in the culture war, and it's like, the misogynists are hating this book. Okay, sure, of course they are. But also read it. God damn it, that book is bad. Like, and it's not the she's a lesbian part that is the bad part. I mean, that's kind of eye rolling the way they do it, but that's that is not the bad part. The bad part is like everything else. Anyway, let me know what do you think? Worst comic over the last several years, in your opinion, and why? Curious what you think. We all talk about, like, the comic industry has gone to complete shit. Well, what is the peak of that shit? What is the thing on the top? What is the cherry on the top? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course, and thanks for listening.